Thank you. Is it a little dark? Does it feel like, are you going to fall asleep? No. Okay. Yeah. Have some more coffee. I just had some coffee for the first time in a couple months, so I might talk really fast. But good morning, and thank you for coming, and thank you for having ice cream for breakfast. That's like my dream, to see all these people eating ice cream for breakfast. Oh, it just got brighter. The wind, like, wow. Thank you. Thank you for being here today. I didn't know what I was going to talk about, and now I kind of figured it out in the course of putting together my talk, which is always the most exciting thing that you can do. So I wanted to start by talking about and showing some of my earlier work. So this is the first magazine that I worked for when I was 10 years old. This Think Teen, very influential throughout the Midwest. I put this magazine together with my best friend Lilia, who lived up the street. As you can see, I had an early interest in design. This was what to wear, what not to wear. That is the question. I had a lot of very deep, hard-hitting investigative journalism stories. I blatantly ripped off ads. Like, look at her face, it's so scary. And then this one, this one's my favorite. We all thought that the people who wrote the magazines wrote the ads as well, so I don't know when I figured out that it was like actually a separation, but this is great because it says it's sponsored by the National Foundation of Liquor, which I just think is like, why did I come up with that? But I love looking at things like this because it reminds me that I always cared about the interplay between words and design and art, storytelling, and I have always been a very creative person. And I look at this to just remind me where I've come from and to understand who I am today. So later I wrote for other places. Finally got out of Think Teen magazine and went to places and read about places like the LA Times. I've always tried to write about things that are very important to me. So in this case, Star Wars, very important to me. Writing for magazines that I care a lot about, like Good, with my wonderful editor, Zach, in the back. And writing about maybe making fun of gadgets or other product launches. Writing in a kind of funny way that brings out points about things in design that people might not understand or think about. And then I've been able to work in places like radio, which has been amazing, working for Frances Anderton on the show. And then 2 years ago, I wrote a book, which is actually a deck of cards. It's not a book at all, which is these walking tours to New York. And then, of course, on my own blog, I kind of just write about everything else, mostly, sometimes gelato, but mostly not other things related to gelato. But I think one thing that I have been able to do well, and hopefully the reason that you wanted me to come here today and talk to you, is because I've been able to get paid to do things that I actually love to do. And I've been able to write about things that I actually care about. So I've been able to like funnel my creativity into a place that has been, a good thing for me to do in my life. But it wasn't always like this. So this is what I think my life was about 5 years ago. It was like going in different directions, and I was like stuck in traffic and didn't know, where to turn. And I made a couple of very specific changes in my life just because I was frustrated or, against a creative wall or whatever we call it. And people always ask me, well, how did you get to where you are today? So from 5 years ago to today, I can share with you a few of those things that I changed in my life. And maybe you're doing great and you don't need to have any change in your life. I think we always need a little bit of insight in what other people have been able to do. So here is how I got here. So the first thing I would suggest is to eat gelato every day. It's kind of not exactly true, but in my case, that is what works for me. So what I'm going to call it is to be totally obsessed. So everybody asks, what's up with the gelato thing? I'm going to tell you the story right now. I think it's good to be obsessed about something, and I'm obsessed with gelato. And I'll tell you how that happened. So I went to Italy as part of this soul-seeking adventure that I had a little over 5 years ago. It was more like 6 years ago. And I saw this, like this incredible ice cream culture on every corner. Anyone who's been to Italy, you walk down the streets and there's like gelato, across the street from gelato, and then gelato. And I was apparently so excited I couldn't even like take pictures that focused because I was like, ah! And so I went through this amazing experience, and I was walking through the cities and looking at architecture and just appreciating where I was, and I was like, wow, I need to be able to do this like every day. I don't care how I do it. I don't care what I'm doing. I need to make sure that I can walk around and look at buildings and write about it every day. So right about this moment where I was eating this, it's like a Cool House sandwich in Italy, right? It was gelato and brioche. I had this gelato moment where I was like, okay, I'm going to change my life, and I'm going to do everything I can going forward to make sure that I can do this every day. Not just eat gelato, but I mean, you can be obsessed with something that's not gelato. Hopefully it's like exercise, because that would be better for you. That would probably be like way healthier. So I went home, and I started a company called Gelato Baby. And of course, you have to announce your company, so I put it in the birth section, which I thought was a little bit more appropriate. And I made these business cards, which I also couldn't take a focused picture of. I was so excited. And I made like Gelato Baby swag and kind of set up myself around this obsession. And the great thing about when you're obsessed with something is that people start to remember you for it. And it becomes this branding thing, which is just so exciting. Especially because they give you free gelato. For me, when you name your company after what you're obsessed with, and you go places and they're like, oh, we want to give you free gelato. Thank you so much for talking about gelato. But people remember you for it, and people know you for it. And that's a great way just to get people to pay attention to what you're doing. And the other thing about being obsessed with something is that it just makes you so happy to think about it every day. Like, if I go here, I'm happy. Like, I think about it. That's like a great place for me to go. And they're all over the world. There's ice cream everywhere, right? And if I know I can go out and have this experience and then go home and write a story about it, it just makes everything else okay in my life. If I have something stressing me out, or an assignment that I'm not as happy about, or like weird projects like this bizarre like public transportation gelato map that I'm working on, which probably only I will use, but it's very important to me that you can be able to get to gelato on public transportation in Los Angeles. And this is like the zone of gelato here, that my 3 favorite places. I think we're just outside of it, but it's okay. So the second thing I would really suggest that you do is to take your work outside of the realm of your studio or your office or wherever, and get it out into the public, into the streets. So I would say put yourself out there is a good way to put it. So I've always loved throwing parties. It's been a really important part of my life, like theme parties and holidays. And I was trying to find a way to have that same kind of feeling when it related to my work, gathering people and meeting new people and kind of putting them in the same room together. And this is a party I started a few years ago with my friend Haley and now Marissa, who's right in the front here. It's called Design East of La Brea. And we wanted to just experience awesome places in the city that we hadn't been, or creatives that we hadn't met. And we just arbitrarily picked La Brea, and now everybody gets mad about it. They're like, why East of La Brea? Why not Western? What's wrong with you? So that part's fun. And so having these amazing parties has just been a really good way for me to take kind of what I'm doing, writing about places, and then writing about places or people, and letting them share what they do with a new audience and interact with people in a cool way. And these are just amazing. And if you haven't, we're like Creative Mornings. We're like Creative Evenings with drinking. So you could come here in the morning and then come to a D-Lab at night, and we always have beer or wine or whatever. So after I was doing that for a few years, the people at Good, who I had started writing for, asked me to put together a similar event series with Casey, who's the creative director there. And we decided to kind of pair designers with urban leaders in different cities and ask them to solve problems that the urban leaders had proposed. And this was designed by the amazing Keith Starworth, who's also in the front row right here. So we started going to all these different cities. And once we did it in LA, a bunch of different cities asked us to do it for their cities. So I've started doing these events where we go to San Francisco, we go to New York, and these designers are able to prove their value beyond just what they do for clients. They're pairing up with these urban leaders. Like the Department of Transportation is working with them now in some cases. So it's been a really amazing chance for us to kind of show how our writing goes beyond the page. And a really good example of something I was able to do a good was part of this farmers market initiative. I don't know if any of you guys went to the big farmers market party. It was like a year ago. So it was part of this 30th anniversary for the farmers markets in LA. And so we wrote this story kind of talking about how maybe the farmers market design doesn't really fit modern lifestyles, so maybe it needs to be redesigned so we can help get that produce to different people in the city in a different way. And we went beyond just writing this article. They asked us to partner with them, and they asked us to put together this competition where we would ask people to re-envision the farmers market. And that's Mia Lair, who won the competition. And then we got to be a big part of this event, and this is me right there. And that's one of the best pictures ever, not because I'm standing behind the mayor, but because I'm standing behind Jonathan Gold, which is amazing. And so you get to prove your value in this different way. And if I had just been writing a story and published it and walked away from it, it's totally different than what actually happened through all this, is that a few months ago they announced this huge food policy that changed in LA. So all of a sudden, good was part of this amazing solution, and what I had written was part of the solution. And as creatives, you can't just design a poster and walk away from it or drop in and solve a problem and say later. You have to get these people rallied around you and take your work out into the streets. So speaking of the streets, this last one is a little bit interesting because it's not really, I wanted to say something like change your ritual, but that sounds like so like Oprah. So I think I tried to make it kind of specific to LA because I think a big ritual and something that frustrates a lot of people in LA is that you go to a job and to get there you have to drive your car there. And I think that makes a lot of people sad. Or maybe it makes you happy. That's okay. And so I think the other biggest change I made 5 years ago was that I tried to look for a different way to get the places that I needed to go. And that changed everything about how I experienced Los Angeles. So does anyone have these in their neighborhood? Does anyone? Okay, so you all know there's these amazing public stairways laced throughout the city where there's hills, where places that were built before a certain time. So when I discovered these where I lived in Hollywood, I thought, no one knows about these. Like, I'm just gonna run up all these staircases and make weird maps about them and tell everybody about how amazing this is. And it started to make me think, I think interacting with these staircases started to make me think, well, why don't I walk everywhere? Like, my name's Walker, that's kind of like a given. And I started thinking more about the way that I get from one place to another and how it would connect me to my neighborhood. So I got rid of my car and I started trying as much as I could to walk or take the bus or train or whatever to get places that I needed to go. And it changed my life the most dramatically of any of the things I've just talked about. So I started noticing things like transit, like the issues going around transit. I started to understand things about politics that I never knew before. I started to appreciate the little things in LA, like these amazing shoes which didn't fit, but I would definitely have taken them if they did. Which you can't see that if you're in a car, right? And I started taking pictures of myself walking around because nobody believed me when I would tell them, like, oh, I walk everywhere, I try to walk everywhere. So now I have documented proof. And then what started to happen is that not having a car becomes like a game. So there's this game layer over Los Angeles for me now, right? So you go and you look at something like this where you're like, I just got to the airport in an hour and it didn't cost any money and everyone should know this. Or sometimes when people tell me where they live, I just kind of like map it on the metro thing, like, oh, I could get there like that way, like even if I have a ride or whatever, right? So it completely changes the way that you interact with your city. And it doesn't have to be that you give up your car or get a bike, but you just have to think about a different way to do things that you do every day. And it's provided so much content for me in my life. Like, I write about these beautiful things I see in the city now. And it's even given me, like, real articles to write about. Like, this is an amazing story about Pete from Mad Men who doesn't have a car. So there's all these things that it has influenced my work and my life in a completely different way. And then I met all these crazy stair people. Do we have any stair people here who have done the stair walks? Yay! So there's all these people who climb stairs and walk long distances in LA. And so I've created this whole other community of people who believe in the same things I do, are working towards these same goals of getting other people to understand it's a great way to live your life. So something funny happened. Something funny happened this year. I got picked for this fellowship that John was talking about. It's the USC Annenberg Getty Arts Journalism Fellowship. And it was 7 arts journalists that were brought from all over the country, or all over the world, to study the arts in LA. And so this is us at Disneyland, purely educational purposes, swear to God. And so we got to just have this amazing immersion process where they put us all in a hotel in downtown LA and every day carted us off to amazing places throughout the city. If you can get one of these, like just apply for anything that says fellowship. It's a great idea. This is us at Ed Moses' studio, which was amazing. So they just took us to all these incredible places throughout LA. And I learned things that I didn't know anything about LA and got to see it in a different perspective. That's the river, which I love. Got to meet all these really interesting people and see just things that kind of blew my mind. And even things I didn't want to learn about LA, which as a scorpion, I ate it. Even things I knew a little bit too well, maybe in LA. So I had this incredible immersion process. And something really interesting happened, like towards the end of it. Maybe it was this day, I don't remember, but I had that same kind of feeling in my stomach, that gelato moment. And I was like, oh, something's happening. But it was not gelato, it was for Los Angeles. I was having the same kind of crazy feeling about Los Angeles. So I realized that what I needed to do was actually add like this other, like fourth rule perhaps to my talk today, which is to change what you do every 5 years completely. And to not be afraid to change everything that you do. And I realized that what was actually happening is that what made my life so great in this last 5 years to begin with is that I started it by making this huge change in my life and deciding that I was going to do something different. And I'm overdue. And it's time to like switch things up. So what if maybe instead I don't write about design, I write about Los Angeles. And I become like, focus everything that I used to do about design and architecture, which I still appreciate and love, but focus it on my own city and covering my own city and the issues that are here and how I can make it better. And what if instead of going all over the world and doing events and traveling and meeting people in other places, I focus on what's going on here and I become a local advocate for everything that's going on. I stay put, which would like never happen. So I'm going to try. And then what if instead of gelato, just kidding, LA is actually in gelato, so that's okay. I'm totally covered on this one. But I still really worry, because I still worry that I'm going to be back at this place again, which is actually a nice place. Like I like downtown. I'm not against like freeways or downtown, but what if I actually get back to this place of confusion again, and I don't know where I'm going, and it's just, I mean, I don't even really know that much about Los Angeles, right? I've only been here for a few years. Why should I change everything that I'm doing? And I was looking for some direction, and then I came across this, another magazine that I produced with my friend Lilia. This one apparently never got published. Maybe we didn't get our advertisers together for that one or something. But if you look at it, there's me at 11 pointing the way, I think, for my future career. I'd never been to California at this point. I don't remember taking this picture. I don't even know like what we were thinking. That's not my sweatshirt. But looking back on this, if you can see like the things from earlier in your creative life that are showing you this path that you're supposed to take, I think that's a really good way to look at your life, and as like this holistic thing of like, I started here and this is who I am. So I think that this is my 11-year-old self pointing me towards this goal, and it makes it okay, and it makes me still understand that that's who I am. So I'll see you in 5 years. I'll let you know how it goes. So does anyone have any questions? Gelato questions are welcome.
What's your favorite gelato?
My favorite gelato is Cool House. Bacon, no. They are amazing. They do amazing things, and I've done a lot of parties and stuff that I've been a part of, including my birthday party one year. My favorite place to go is Scoops. Any of you have ever been to Scoops? So they just opened a second location on the west side. They're located at Melrose and Heliotrope. They just have very inventive, exciting flavors, and they take kind of like an art approach to it. I think they kind of think very radically about flavor combinations. So that's my favorite place. Anyone else? Yeah?
Do you do food critiques?
I do. I like writing about food. It's one of my favorite things to write about. I don't consider myself a food critic. I like really interesting food experiences and how it gets you to different places in the city and how a place is representative of where it is and the neighborhood and who goes there. So in that way, I'm interested. I wouldn't like slam someone for, bad service on my blog. I try to celebrate the positive things. Although if I have bad ice cream, I will. I'll let you know.
You talked about how getting paid for what you love to do, and how do you see like in the next 5 years, where do you think like the majority of your income would come from? Is it from like writing, or would it be more doing like events and speaking engagements?
Yeah, like already, well, not through any thing that I've done, but already less money is coming from, writing things. So you do kind of have to do many things at once, I felt like writing for one publication could be dangerous almost in this market now, so it's almost better to be a freelancer, I think. It's not, not saying that you should change that if you're working in a place that's great. But the speaking thing has been amazing, and that's kind of putting yourself out there and showing that you can coordinate an event or that you could moderate a panel or something like that. And I've been able to ask for money to speak and to put together events, which I just would do for fun anyway because it's a fun thing to do. And so I think that diversifying, if you're any kind of creative, same thing with like teaching, that's a really important part of what you do as a creative, that you need to share that and pass it along. So I feel like speaking is definitely a part of my job, is passing along what I know. And I do think it'll be like probably less money getting made from writing and more from doing those public things.
With all that you do, how do you manage your time and prioritize your projects?
I work almost all the time. But even really good things are work. Even really everything is work. My whole life is work, I guess. So this is a different way to put it. So everything that I do, I find some way to monetize it, even if it's just having fun, which is a little sick. But I just constantly am thinking of could this be a story? Could this be an event? And you have to actually just train your brain to do that. It's actually hard because sometimes weeks later you'll be like, why didn't I ask that guy what he was doing? And so you have to kind of start to think that way as you're going through your life. And as far as time management, I don't know. I do everything wrong. I'm on IM all day and email people back right away, and none of that. I don't do any. I type really fast. Maybe that's a good thing. Yeah. I don't know. Anyone else? Yeah.
I'm not even sure if this is totally a question, but I'm curious what you think about the sort of that long trend of there's no there in Los Angeles, and that's your new obsession. What do you think about that idea?
I think that Los Angeles is the most interesting place to live in the world right now because of what you're saying, because at least people are asking that question right now. I think...
Sorry, there is no there?
There is no there, I think, is a famous quote about LA. I think there are many theres there, which is kind of a more exciting thing. LA, the new plan for LA, if you talk to the planning director or a lot of architects or whatever, is to have this kind of decentralized hubs of neighborhoods all over the city, which is not that different from what we have now, but that you could actually get there on a train or not taking you 2 hours to get from place to place. And I think that that's totally different from any other city that I know of. You could think of places like Paris or Barcelona, maybe that are more like that. They're a little bit more spread out. And I think that that's the new American city, or the new way to think about cities, because we don't all go to the same place every day. We don't all go downtown and then commute back to our suburbs. We might work right where we live, and we might be able to work in another neighborhood that's just as good as where we live. So I think that anyone that talks negatively about it, I'm like, that's amazing. What a great challenge for us to be able to be a part of this change and be here when it's happening, and be able to convince people that it's actually a good place to live, and bring them here and show them what a great place it is. And actually, I would prefer that people think it's a bad place, because then they won't come here, so that's totally fine with me. But that's something I'm interested in exploring. That's what I want to focus on. Exactly. Anyone else? Yeah, who's a native? Is anybody? So you stuck around? You believe? Just kidding. Yeah.
You mentioned something about a project that you were doing, as kind of a liaison or something between designers and public plans, city planners.
Yep.
Will you talk a little bit about that project?
Yeah. So the first thing that we started is called Good Design, and the first event we had was a couple years ago as part of this program series that Good has. And so we just came up with an idea, because we always hear designers talking about how they want to make a difference, they want to make a difference, they want to help in their communities. But we wanted to give them real problems to solve. Because if you're just coming up with something and you're like, oh, that's a great idea. But we wanted to show that the designers could be of value to the cities too. Because a lot of people who work in like City Hall, they think that designers are like fashion designers, or they design like bridges, but they can't like think systematically about things, or systemically, I guess is a better way. So we were kind of bridging the two in a way that would help both parties maybe make this amazing connection with finding people who could solve their problems in their city and giving designers this outlet to solve problems. So the designers get paired with the problems about a month before the event, and then at the event they present these little 5 to 10 minute just a PowerPoint like this, just talking about what they think the solutions are. But in a lot of cases, it's just a great event where it gets everybody talking about what we think the city should look like. But especially in San Francisco, where we've had the event twice, these people are like getting called into the mayor's office for meetings. A lot of this stuff is like happening in one way or the other. So we want to find a way to make this kind of self-operate, like a TEDx almost of events, where we could be like, if you want to do this in your city and you want to match the urban people with the design people, you can have the same kind of conversation in your city. So that's what I'd be hoping. This is ongoing. If you go to my website, it's on the side on Gelato Baby. If you go to Good and Google, I think if you Google Good Design, you might get some things about it. We're going to do it in LA again this year, and we're doing it in New York, and we're doing it with 2 schools this year as well. The schools are amazing.
How would you describe the design community in LA? Is it strong? Is it weak? And what are like the biggest opportunities for growth?
Yeah, people ask me that all the time, here and from other places, or they say, I heard the design community is lame in LA. Can you tell me if it is? I don't consider what is here. I consider what's in New York. Like, I see that and I look at that, I'm like, that's a design community. That's the design community. In LA, I don't think of it as a design community. I think of it as just like a creative community. And I think that encompasses the kind of people that are here. Like, I can't really look at somebody and say, oh, he does this or she does this. Like, they always do like 10 things, and then they do one thing at night, and then they do like something else like in secret that they didn't tell anybody about. So I feel like that's the kind of creative that's here, and we don't like to be defined, and we don't want to be, even me, like I say writer, and I'm like, it's not really, So am I part of the writing community? I don't know. But I think that's the strength and the kind of overlay of like architecture and art and film and amazing like motion graphics and people who are like making stuff in their garage. It's like weird. And so I think that's part of like the culture of who people are here. And so I wouldn't tell people to say like talk about the design community or go look for the design community. I'd be like, go to the downtown art walk or go to that cool architecture show that just opened or something, and go to a gallery and just meet people in a different way.
Do you feel there's an actual community?
I feel a part of two very distinct communities. I think like something like D-Lab that we've started was to kind of create that community, and now we have like 500 people that get our emails, that blows my mind, and I'm like terrified sometimes. I'm like, oh, all these people, like, can we please them? Will the next event be good? But I think you have to create your own communities, and that's part of why I kind of said that, is that if you're searching for something, there's great events and people and places like Machine Project is a great example. I'm sure you guys all know about that, but it's like, the fact that they can get people to come and teach these bizarre things, like I made like a watermelon, like a contact microphone and a watermelon, like that is amazing. And that's not design, but that's something different and more special, I think. Anyone else?
In that picture with even the hill walkers.
The hill people. I like that. Oh, I forgot that. Yeah, we don't live in houses anymore. I should have added more context to that. That's an annual event called the Big Parade, and it takes place in the summer, usually during June Gloom, we hope. And we walked from downtown to the Hollywood sign, going on like over 100 public stairways through the neighborhoods on the way there. And we got permission to camp out by the reservoir, by the Silver Lake Reservoir, and spend the night in our tents that were pitched. And people were like, these homeless people have really nice tents. That's amazing. But that's an annual thing. There's a great walk, I think, that just happened. in November where people walk. They walk down Wilshire, I think, from downtown to Santa Monica. So there's all these amazing kind of like extreme walkers clubs that are happening in LA, and I just never would have known about it if I hadn't, actually looked around. And there's actually the big parade people lead tours, like training walks almost every week, like around this part of town. So you can go to big parade and you'll be able to find, like I do an architecture themed one in Silver Lake every few months. So come to that. We get gelato too. Anyone else?
You did have a photograph of the different architectural places you went, and there was a circle going up. Where is that?
That is a very special place. It's the New Carver Apartments. It's designed by Michael Maltzin, and it's for people who have just recently come off the streets. So I'm not sure exactly the term for that, but it's like it's affordable housing for people, and they go through a whole program of how to, because it's actually very difficult for them. They want to actually stay on the streets a lot of times because that's where they know people and that's where their homes are. So it's kind of a really progressive program to help get people to be in a new community with people. And he designed it, and it's one of the most amazing buildings I've ever been in. It's about this far from the 10 freeway, and you can't hear the freeway at all because of the way that they've designed it and the way they've angled the windows and
Inside the structure.
so I'm in. So you walk into this amazing kind of like courtyard area, and then you're able to look up. So they are leading tours there now. I think monthly. If you look up New Carver Apartments, and we're going to do a D-Lab there in the new year as well, because Michael is just an amazing architect and has this wonderful, heart for what he's doing. Very cool place.
If you had to choose only one place in LA that just took your breath away, what's the most amazing experience? What would it be?
On the fellowships, particularly? I really want to go kayaking down the LA River. Has anybody here done it? Now that it's been declared a navigable river, all of a sudden, I'm serious. Like the EPA passed a law, so now it's navigable. So now, before it was just like a storm drain or something, and now they've raised the level, so it's actually a navigable river. So some people went kayaking down it the other day, and I want there to be that time where we're all going on these amazing float trips on the LA River, and you can like stop and have a beer in like Frogtown, and then like keep going or something, and then put your kayak on your bike and ride it back up. I want to envision that as what I would be really excited to have. Anyone else? Yeah.
You're walking towards the ballet. Are you planning on printing or doing a book about that?
So Chronicle is interested in doing that version of it, but their publishers are scared of the world. So as they should be, it's hard to sell books. So I'm thinking what I might develop myself is something that's not a printed book, but something more like an iPad app or something, not an iPad app, an iPhone app, or something else that you could take with you that made a little bit more sense for when you're walking. Because even like juggling cards, even though they're cards, sometimes you're like, it's so much stuff.
And would that encompass other parts of Los Angeles too? We're talking about different neighborhoods like
Oh yeah.
Pasadena.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, I have this all kind of idea in my head for something I want to do. There's a gigantic citywide thing happening right now called Survey LA. Does anyone know? They're actually trying to determine the age, architect, use of every building in the whole entire city, which is just massive and insane. Yeah. So they're actually starting up again. You can go volunteer for this and go. With them, you kind of walk down the street, you're check, check. So they're doing another project in the spring, and we're hoping to do a D-Lab where you can go, it'll be in South LA, where you volunteer for the day, you canvass the neighborhood. And so I'm hoping to take all that data when they have that ready and almost cut the city in a way that you'd be like, I'm gonna go see all the Victorians. How can I go on this amazing Victorian, where are the most Victorians in one place, So that's what I'm really interested in developing. I think it'll take some time, but it'll be better than my Gelato public transportation map, hopefully. Anyone else? All right, feel free to ask me anything you want. Send me an email, whatever. Happy to talk to you more anytime. And I don't know, go to work.
Thank you.